Hey everyone, it's Patricia here, and I'm 67 years old. What I'm about to tell you is probably going to make your blood boil, because honestly, it still makes mine boil even though it happened 6 months ago. But stick with me, because the ending, oh honey, the ending is going to make you cheer. So let me paint you a picture of my life. I've been divorced for 15 years now. My ex-husband left me for his secretary. Yeah, I know, super original, right? But honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I raised my son Tyler mostly on my own from the time he was 12. Tyler is now 32, and let me tell you, I thought I had raised him right. Boy, was I wrong about that. For the past 25 years, I worked as a school administrator. Not glamorous, not high-paying, but steady. Every month, without fail, I put away whatever I could into my retirement fund. We're talking about sacrifices here, people. While other women my age were getting their nails done or taking weekend trips, I was clipping coupons and buying generic everything so I could save for my future. I drove the same beat-up Honda Civic for 12 years. 12 years! The air conditioning didn't work for the last 3 years, but I dealt with it because every penny I didn't spend on a car payment went into that retirement account. I lived in the same small 2-bedroom apartment for over a decade because moving costs money, and I wasn't about to touch my savings. I ate ramen noodles more times than I care to admit, not because I liked them, but because they cost 40 cents a pack. I'm talking about real sacrifices here, the kind where you choose between buying yourself a new pair of shoes or putting an extra $50 away for retirement. But you know what? I didn't mind. I was proud of myself. Every time I got that monthly statement showing my balance growing, even if it was just by $100 or $200, I felt like I was winning. I was building something. Security, independence, a future where I wouldn't have to depend on anyone. Tyler knew about my retirement fund. How could he not? I talked about it all the time. Mom's retirement money, I'd call it. When he was in college and struggling, I'd remind him why I couldn't just hand him cash for everything. That's Mom's retirement money, sweetheart. That's what's going to keep me from being a burden on you when I'm old. And Tyler seemed to get it. He'd nod and say things like, Mom, you're so smart to save like that. I respect that you're planning ahead. He even used to joke that I was more disciplined than most financial advisors he knew. But wait, let me back up and tell you about Tyler as an adult, because this context is important for what comes next. And trust me, you're going to need to understand the full picture to believe what this man did to his own mother. Tyler graduated college with a decent degree in marketing, but he never seemed to stick with anything. He'd get a job, work for 8 or 10 months, then something would happen. His boss was unreasonable, or the company culture was toxic, or the pay wasn't enough, or the commute was too long. Always something. He went through 7 jobs in 5 years. 7. Each time he quit or got fired, guess who he'd call? Mom, I just need a little help with rent this month. Mom, can you spot me for groceries until I find something new? Mom, my car needs repairs and I don't get paid for 2 weeks. And I helped him, of course I did. What mother wouldn't? But I never touched my retirement money for Tyler. Never. I'd take extra shifts at work, or I'd eat even more ramen than usual, or I'd skip getting my hair done for 3 months. But that retirement fund was sacred. When Tyler was 28, he started talking about wanting to buy a house. He'd found this cute little place in a decent neighborhood, and he was convinced that home ownership was going to change his life. Make him more responsible, more grounded. The problem was his credit was garbage from all those periods of unemployment and some credit card mistakes he'd made in his early 20s. Mom, he said to me one evening over dinner, I need you to co-sign for this house, just until I can refinance in a couple of years when my credit improves. I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But he seemed so hopeful, so determined to turn his life around. And honestly, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my son was finally ready to be an adult. So I co-signed. And you know what? For the first year, everything was fine. Tyler made his payments on time. He seemed stable in his new job at a marketing firm downtown. He even invited me over for dinner once a month to show off how well he was maintaining the place. I was proud of him. Finally, I thought, my son is growing up. But then things started to change again. Tyler began missing our monthly dinners. When I'd call to check in, he'd sound distracted, hurried. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just busy with work. You know how it is." The first missed mortgage payment happened about 18 months after he bought the house. The bank called me because I was the co-signer. "Mrs. Henderson, we need to discuss your son's account." My heart sank into my stomach. When I confronted Tyler about it, he looked genuinely panicked. "Mom, I'm so sorry. This big client payment got delayed and I thought it would come through before the mortgage was due. It's just a timing thing. I'll have it sorted out by next week." He did pay it, plus the late fee. But then it happened again, 2 months later, and again. Each time Tyler had an explanation. Each time he promised it wouldn't happen again. Each time. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. The calls from the bank became more frequent, more urgent. They started using words like foreclosure and legal action. I was so scared I couldn't sleep at night. My name was on that loan. My credit was going to be destroyed. At 65 years old, my financial reputation was going to be ruined because I trusted my son. That's when Tyler came to me with his proposal. The one that makes me sick to my stomach even now, thinking about how smoothly he delivered it. "Mom," he said, sitting in my tiny living room, looking so earnest and sincere. "I've been thinking about your situation." My situation? I wasn't the one behind on mortgage payments. "You're getting close to retirement," he continued, "and I know you're worried about managing your money. What if I took over handling your retirement account? I could invest it better, maybe get you higher returns, and I could use some of it to get caught up on the house payments, then pay it back with interest once I'm stabilized." I stared at him. "Tyler, that's my retirement money. That's everything I have." "I know, Mom, and that's exactly why you should. Let me manage it properly. You've done such a good job saving it, but just letting it sit there isn't smart. I have connections in finance now. I could probably double it in a couple of years." He had an answer for everything. When I worried about risk, he talked about diversified portfolios and market opportunities. When I said I didn't understand investments, he said that's exactly why I needed his help. When I hesitated, he reminded me that the alternative was losing the house and destroying both our credit ratings. Think about it, Mom. This solves both our problems. I get stable, you get better returns on your money, and we both protect our credit. It's win-win. I should have said no. I should have told him to figure out his own problems. I should have trusted my gut, which was screaming that this was a terrible idea. But I was scared. Scared of the bank calls. Scared of foreclosure. Scared of my credit being ruined at my age. And honestly, I was tired. Tired of watching my adult son struggle. Tired of feeling responsible for his failures because I was the co-signer. So I said yes. The process of transferring control of my retirement account to Tyler took about 3 weeks. He handled all the paperwork, explaining each step to me in that confident way of his. "Just sign here, Mom. This gives me power of attorney over the account so I can make investment decisions without bothering you every time." I signed. "And this one moves the funds to a new account that I can manage more actively." I signed. "This last one just updates your beneficiary information and contact preferences." I signed that too. Tyler was so grateful. He hugged me tight and said, "Mom, you won't regret this. I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to make this work for both of us." For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Tyler would send me monthly statements showing my account balance. The numbers looked good, better than they'd been when the money was just sitting in my old retirement fund. Tyler would call every couple of weeks to update me on his investment strategies and how well my money was performing. "Mom, you're not going to believe this, but I got you a 12% return last month." told you I knew what I was doing. I felt so relieved, so proud of my son for finally stepping up and taking care of both of us. The mortgage payments were current. My retirement money was growing. Everything was working out exactly like Tyler had promised. But then I started noticing little things. Tyler's car got an upgrade, not a huge one, but definitely newer and nicer than what he'd been driving. When I mentioned it, he said he'd gotten a great deal from someone at work. His apartment suddenly had all new furniture. Mom, I found this amazing estate sale. Got everything for practically nothing. He started dressing better, going out more. When I'd call him on weekend evenings, I could hear music and people in the background. Just having a few friends over, Mom. Nothing crazy. I didn't think too much about it at first. Tyler was finally doing well. He deserved to enjoy himself a little, right? And his explanations all made sense. Estate sales, work deals, small celebrations with friends. But then the bank called again. Henderson, we need to discuss your son's mortgage account. He's now 3 months behind on payments. 3 months? But Tyler had been sending me statements showing that my investment returns were covering the mortgage payments and more. When I confronted Tyler about it, he looked genuinely confused. Mom, that's impossible. I just made a payment 2 weeks ago. There must be some kind of error with their system. You know how banks are with their computers. He promised to call them first thing Monday morning and sort it out. But Monday came and went. Then Tuesday. By Wednesday, I called the bank myself. Mrs. Henderson, I'm looking at the account right now. The last payment we received was 4 months ago. 4 months. My hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. Something was very, very wrong. That evening, I drove to Tyler's house unannounced. I needed to see those investment statements again. I needed him to show me exactly where my money was and how it was being managed. But when I pulled into his driveway, my blood turned to ice. There were cars everywhere. Music was blasting from inside the house loud enough that I could hear it from the street. Through the front windows, I could see people dancing, drinking, laughing. This wasn't a few friends over. This was a full-blown party. And parked right there in Tyler's driveway like a slap in the face was a brand new BMW. Not new to him, actually new. Temporary tags and everything. I sat in my old Honda Civic, staring at that BMW, and something inside me started to break apart. Because I knew. Deep down in my bones, I knew exactly where the money for that car had come from. I should have marched up to that front door right then and confronted him in front of all his friends. I should have demanded answers immediately. But I didn't. I was too shocked, too hurt, too scared of what I was going to find out. Instead, I drove home and spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that there was some logical explanation. Maybe Tyler had gotten a huge bonus at work. Maybe he'd won the lottery. Maybe someone had died and left him money, but I knew better. The next morning, I called the investment company that Tyler claimed to be working with. The company name was right there on the statements he'd been sending me. Henderson account. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have any account under that name. Are you sure you have the right company? I tried 3 more companies. Same response. The statements Tyler had been sending me were fake. I don't know how long I sat there holding the phone after that last call, but it felt like hours. The room was spinning. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. My son, my own son, had stolen my retirement money. But wait, it gets worse. So much worse. I spent the next 2 days trying to reach Tyler, but every call went straight to voicemail. Finally, I drove back to his house, and this time I didn't care who was there or what was happening. I was getting my answers. The house was quiet when I arrived, but Tyler's new BMW was in the driveway. I pounded on the front door until he answered, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed, even though it was 2 in the afternoon. Mom, what are you doing here? We need to talk. Now, something in my voice must have told him this wasn't a casual visit, because his whole demeanor changed. He suddenly looked nervous, fidgety. "Tyler," I said, stepping into his living room without being invited. "I called the investment companies. All of them." His face went white. "Where is my money?" For a long moment he just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. Then he tried to smile, tried to turn on that charm that had worked on me so many times before. "Mom, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Then explain, right now. Where is my retirement money?" "Okay, look, I made some mistakes. Some of the investments didn't pan out like I thought they would. But it's not gone, it's just tied up right now. I can get it back." "How much is left?" Silence. "Tyler, how much of my money is left?" More silence. "Answer me." About 8,000. 8,000. Out of $63,000, there was 8,000 left. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming or collapsing or both. Where did it go? Where did $55,000 go? That's when the truth started coming out. Bit by bit, like pulling teeth, Tyler confessed to everything. The mortgage payments had stopped 4 months ago because he'd quit his job. Abiome decided he was done with the corporate grind and wanted to focus on building his personal brand through social media. The parties I'd witnessed weren't just friends hanging out. They were networking events that Tyler was hosting to build his influence and connections. I was investing in my future, Mom, in our future, the BMW that was necessary for his image as a successful entrepreneur. You can't show up to high-level meetings in a beat-up car, Mom. Appearance matters in business. The new clothes, the new furniture, the constant entertaining. It was all business expenses in Tyler's mind. He was networking and building relationships that would pay off big time once his social media presence took off. I was going to pay it all back, Mom, with interest. Once I start making real money from my online business, you'll get every penny back, plus more. I stared at this man, this 32-year-old man who was supposed to be my son, and I didn't recognize him. Where was the little boy I'd raised? Where was the teenager who used to help me carry groceries and tell me I was the strongest person he knew? "Tyler," I said quietly, "that money was supposed to last me for the rest of my life. I saved for 25 years. I sacrificed everything so I wouldn't have to be a burden on anyone when I got old." "Mom, you're being dramatic. It's not like you're going to be homeless. You've got Social Security, and I'm going to pay you back. This is just a temporary setback. A temporary setback. 25 years of sacrifices. 25 years of ramen noodles and broken air conditioning and generic everything. Gone. Spent on parties and cars and clothes so my son could play pretend entrepreneur. Get out," I whispered. "What? Get out of this house. Right now. Mom, this is my house. No, Tyler. This house has my name on the mortgage. This house that you haven't made a payment on in 4 months. Get out. You can't kick me out of my own house." But I was already walking toward his bedroom. I started grabbing clothes from his dresser and throwing them toward the front door. "You want to be an independent entrepreneur? Then be independent. Find your own place to live." Tyler followed me, protesting, making excuses, promising he'd fix everything. But I wasn't listening anymore. Something had shifted inside me, like a switch had been flipped. For 32 years, I'd been Tyler's safety net. For 32 years, I'd been the one to clean up his messes, pay for his mistakes, enable his irresponsibility. And what had it gotten me? It had gotten me robbed. By my own son. I threw the last of his clothes out the front door and turned to face him. "You have 1 hour to get your personal things and leave. After that, I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." "Mom, please, just listen to me. I can fix this. Give me 6 months, and I'll have your money back." "With what?" "Money, Tyler. You don't have a job. You spent my retirement fund on parties. What exactly are you going to use to pay me back?" He didn't have an answer for that. 1 hour, I repeated, and I shut the door in his face. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets really good. I wasn't done. Not even close. You see that BMW sitting in the driveway? The one Tyler bought with my money? Well, Tyler might have forgotten this little detail, but when I co-signed for the house, I also co-signed for that car loan 6 months earlier. When he said he needed reliable transportation for his new job, that car was in my name too. Tyler had been so focused on his grand plans and his networking events that he'd forgotten about the paperwork he'd had me sign. But I remembered. Oh, I remembered everything. The next morning, I called a towing company. I need my car removed from a property, I told them. It's being used without my permission. When Tyler came back the next day to get more of his things, his precious BMW was gone. I was sitting on the front porch waiting for him. "Where's my car?" he demanded. "Your car?" "Tyler, that car is registered in my name. I'm the primary on the loan. That car belongs to me." The look on his face was priceless. Pure shock mixed with the dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, he'd messed with the wrong woman. "You can't just take my car." "I can. And I did. Just like you took my money." "That's different. That money was an investment. And this car is collateral." I stood up from the porch chair and walked down to where he was standing. "Tyler, let me explain something to you. That car is worth about $35,000. Your outstanding debt to me is $55,000. So even if I sell this car and keep every penny, you'll still owe me $20,000. Tyler's mouth was hanging open. I don't think it had ever occurred to him that there might be consequences for his actions. Real consequences. "But Mom, how am I supposed to get to job interviews without a car?" "The same way millions of other people do it. Public transportation, Uber, walking, figure it out." "This is insane. You're ruining my life over money." And that's when I lost it. That's when 32 years of enabling and excusing and sacrificing for this ungrateful man came pouring out of me. "I'm ruining your life? Tyler, you stole my retirement money. You lied to me for months. You forged fake investment statements. You threw parties with my money while I thought you were being responsible with it." I was shouting now, and I didn't care who heard me. I worked for 25 years, saving every penny I could, so I could have dignity in my old age, so I wouldn't have to choose between medication and groceries when I'm 70. And you spent it on a car and parties because you were too lazy to keep a real job. Tyler tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. "You want to talk about ruining lives? Let me tell you what you've done to mine. I'm 67 years old. I have maybe 10 good working years left if I'm lucky. You've stolen my security, my independence, my future, and you stand there and tell me I'm being dramatic." By this point, I was crying, but I wasn't sad. I was furious, angrier than I'd ever been in my entire life. "The car is sold, Tyler. The money is going toward what you owe me. And if you think this is the end of it, you're wrong. Dead wrong. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering what happened next, right? Well, let me tell you, this story is just getting started. Because selling that BMW was just the beginning, honey. Oh, I was just getting warmed up. You see, while Tyler was having his little meltdown about his car being repossessed, I was doing something I should have done months earlier. I was getting organized. I was making lists. I was gathering evidence. The first thing I did was contact a lawyer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lawyers are expensive, and I just lost most of my retirement money. But sometimes you have to spend money to make money, right? And this lawyer, Mrs. Chen, she took one look at my situation, and her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Mrs. Henderson," she said, "your son committed several crimes here. We're talking about financial elder abuse, forgery, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. You have him dead to rights." Turns out, when Tyler had me sign those papers giving him power of attorney over my retirement account, he'd also signed documents swearing that he would act in my best interests and manage my money responsibly. What he'd actually done was the exact opposite of that. "The fake investment statements alone are evidence of fraud," Mrs. Chen explained. "But using your money for personal expenses while lying to you about it, that's criminal financial abuse of an elderly person." Elderly person. I didn't love that phrase. But if it meant Tyler was going to face real consequences, I'd take it. Mrs. Chen helped me file a police report. Let me tell you, walking into that police station and saying, "I want to report my son for stealing my retirement money," was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But also, it felt good. It felt like I was finally fighting back. The detective who took my statement, Officer Rodriguez, he was so patient and thorough. He looked at every fake document Tyler had created, every forged statement, every receipt I could find for the parties and the car, and all the other ways my son had blown through my life savings. "Ma'am," he said, "I've seen a lot of these financial abuse cases, and usually the family members don't want to press charges. They just want their money back. But what your son did to you, this is serious. This is felony-level theft. Felony-level theft. My own son." While the police investigation was getting started, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Because here's the thing about Tyler. He's always been a show-off. He can't do anything without posting about it on social media. And guess what I found when I started looking through his Instagram and Facebook accounts? Evidence. Mountains of evidence. Photos of him at expensive restaurants with captions like, "Celebrating another successful investment." Videos of him at his parties, showing off his new clothes, his new furniture, his new car. Posts about his entrepreneur lifestyle and how he was making moves in the business world. And the dates? The dates on these posts lined up perfectly with when my money was disappearing from the retirement account. But here's the really stupid part. Tyler had tagged the locations and the people in most of these posts. I could see exactly where my money had gone. That fancy steakhouse downtown. He'd posted a photo of a $300 dinner for 6 people. The upscale bar where he'd hosted his networking events. He'd posted the receipts showing he'd spent over $2,000 in one night buying drinks for everyone. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a stupid thief who documented his crimes on social media. I screenshot everything, every post, every photo, every boastful caption about his success and his investment strategies. I printed them all out and made a nice little folder for Mrs. Chen and Officer Rodriguez. But you know what the best part was? While I was gathering all this evidence, Tyler was calling me every single day, begging for forgiveness and promising to pay me back. "Mom, please, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but I can fix this. Just give me another chance." How are you going to fix it, Tyler? You don't have a job. You don't have any money. You spent it all on parties. "I'll get a job. 2 jobs, I'll work. Day and night until I pay you back every penny." And you know what? For about 5 seconds, I almost believed him, because that's what mothers do, right? We want to believe our children can change, can do better, can become the people we raised them to be. But then I remembered something. Tyler had been making me these same promises for 20 years. Every time he got fired, every time he quit a job, every time he needed money, he always had a plan to turn his life around. He always swore things would be different next time. 20 years of next times, and here we were. "Tyler," I said during one of these phone calls, "if you're really sorry, if you really want to make this right, then you'll cooperate with the key." Police investigation. Silence. "Mom, you called the police." I did. "And you know what? They're very interested in talking to you." "But Mom, I'm your son. How could you have me arrested? How could you steal from your elderly mother?" More silence. "Tyler, the police are going to find you whether you cooperate or not. But if you turn yourself in, if you're honest about what you did and show some real remorse, maybe the judge will go easier on you." But Tyler didn't turn himself in. Instead, he did what he always did when faced with consequences for his actions. He ran. His phone went straight to voicemail for 3 days. When I drove by the house, it was empty. No cars. In the driveway, no lights on at night. Tyler had disappeared. For a minute, I actually felt bad. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have tried to work things out privately instead of involving the police. But then Mrs. Chen called me with some news that changed everything. "Mrs. Henderson, I've been doing some digging into your son's finances and I found something interesting. That BMW that you repossessed? Tyler didn't just buy one car with your money. He bought two. Two cars. There's a lease agreement for a Mercedes-Benz that's also in your name as a co-signer. Tyler's been driving it for 3 months. Are you kidding me? While I was eating ramen noodles and driving a 12-year-old Honda, my son had been driving around in not one but 2 luxury cars that I was paying for. Where is this Mercedes?" I asked. "That's the problem. Tyler turned it in to the leasing company yesterday and paid the early termination fee. In cash. In cash." Tyler, who supposedly had no money, had somehow come up with $4,000 in cash to get out of a car lease. "Mrs. Henderson, I think your son has been hiding assets. I think there's more money out there that he hasn't told you about." Mrs. Chen was right. Over the next week, we discovered that Tyler had opened 3 different credit cards using my personal information as a reference. He'd also taken out a personal loan from one of those online lending companies, again using my information to strengthen his application. My son hadn't just stolen my retirement money. He'd been systematically using my identity and credit history to fund his lifestyle for months. I was so angry I couldn't see straight, but I was also scared. How much debt had Tyler racked up in my name? How badly was this going to affect my credit? At 67 years old, was I going to spend my remaining years trying to clean up financial messes I didn't even know existed? That's when Mrs. Chen suggested we hire a private investigator. "Tyler's hiding assets and income," she said. "If we're going to get your money back, we need to find out what he's really worth and where he's been getting cash." The private investigator, a former police detective named Jake Morrison, found Tyler in less than a week. He was staying with some woman he'd met at one of his parties, living in her apartment across town. And get this, he was driving her car, a nice little Audi, while telling everyone his mom had temporarily borrowed his BMW for some family emergency. But Jake found out something even more interesting. Tyler did have a job. He'd been working part-time for a social media marketing company, getting paid under the table to manage Instagram accounts for local businesses. He'd been making decent money, not enough to pay me back quickly, but enough that he could have been making payments while living more modestly. Instead, he'd chosen to pretend he was broke while continuing to live like a trust fund kid on my dime. Jake also discovered that Tyler had been telling people, his friends, his girlfriend, his co-workers, that he was managing his family's investment portfolio and that his mother had gifted him money to start his own business. Gift. He was telling people I'd given him $63,000 as a gift. When Mrs. Chen presented all this evidence to the district attorney, they decided to upgrade the charges against Tyler. We weren't just talking about theft anymore. We were talking about identity theft, credit fraud, and organized financial abuse. The DA's office issued a warrant for Tyler's arrest. They found him 2 days later at a coffee shop downtown, probably meeting with another potential client for his under-the-table social media work. According to Jake, who happened to be watching the place, Tyler tried to run when he saw the police coming. He tried to run. My 32-year-old son tried to run from the police like some kind of common criminal. They caught him, obviously, and when they searched his backpack, they found something very interesting. A notebook full of usernames and passwords for social media accounts that didn't belong to him, along with a list of clients who were paying him to post fake reviews and manipulate their online presence. Tyler wasn't just a thief who'd stolen from his mother. He was running a small-time fraud operation, getting paid to create fake online reviews and manipulate social media engagement for businesses. The charges kept piling up. When Tyler was arrested, he used his one phone call to call me. "Mom, please. You have to help me. They're saying I could go to prison for 5 years. 5 years. Good. Tyler, you stole my retirement money. You committed fraud. You used my identity to take out loans. What did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd never find out. I thought I'd be able to pay it all back before you noticed. And there it was. The truth. Tyler had never intended to invest my money or help me get better returns. He'd planned from the beginning to steal it and hope I never figured it out. Mom, please, can you call the DA and tell them you don't want to press charges? Tell them it was a family misunderstanding? I almost laughed. Tyler, it's not up to me anymore. You committed crimes, real crimes. The state is prosecuting you now. But I'm your son. You were my son. My son wouldn't have stolen from me. My son wouldn't have lied to me for months. My son wouldn't have used my identity to commit fraud. I hung up on him. The next few months were a whirlwind of court dates, legal meetings, and paperwork. Tyler eventually pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 3 years in prison and an order to pay full restitution. 3 years. He was going to spend 3 years in prison thinking about what he'd done to his mother. But here's the thing about restitution orders. They're only as good as the person's ability to pay. Tyler had no legitimate assets, no steady income, no way to pay me back $25,000 a year from prison. However, Mrs. Chen had another idea. Mrs. Henderson, your son may not have money now, but he's going to get out of prison eventually. And when he does, he's going to need to find work and start rebuilding his life. We can garnish his wages for the next 20 years if we have to. 20 years of Tyler's future paychecks coming to me instead of him. 20 years of him being reminded every single pay period that actions have consequences. I like that idea. But the best part, the absolute best part was still coming, you. See that house that Tyler had been living in? The one I'd co-signed for? The bank had started foreclosure proceedings because of all those missed payments. But Mrs. Chen had negotiated something beautiful with them. Instead of foreclosing and destroying both our credit ratings, the bank agreed to let me take over the mortgage payments and transfer the deed entirely into my name. Since I'd been the co-signer and my credit was still decent, they were willing to work with me. So I became the owner of Tyler's house. And you know what I did with it? I sold it. The house sold for $180,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage balance and the realtor fees. I walked away with about $45,000, combined with the money I'd gotten from selling Tyler's BMW and the small amount that was left in the retirement account. I'd recovered about $60,000 of my original $63,000. Not everything, but close enough. But wait, there's more. Remember that girlfriend of Tyler's? The one whose apartment he'd been staying in while pretending to be broke? Well, it turns out she had no idea about any of his criminal activity. She thought Tyler was a successful social media consultant whose mother was just being difficult about some family money. When Jake, the private investigator, explained to her what Tyler had actually done, how he'd stolen his elderly mother's retirement fund, how he'd been lying about having a job, how he'd been using my identity to take out loans, she kicked him out immediately. She also did something else. She called me. Mrs. Henderson, this is Amanda. I was dating your son. Yes? I just found out what he did to you, and I am so sorry. I had no idea. He told me you were being unreasonable about some investment disagreement. It wasn't an investment disagreement, Amanda. He stole my retirement money. I know that now. And I want you to know that I told him he needs to get a job the minute he gets out of prison and start paying you back. What he did to you is unforgivable. It was nice to hear someone validate that Tyler's behavior was wrong. For months, I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if I was being too harsh, if I should have just accepted his apologies and tried to work things out privately. But Amanda's reaction, the shock, the disgust, the immediate understanding that Tyler had done something terrible, reminded me that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being vindictive. I was holding my son accountable for his actions, probably for the first time in his life. Amanda also told me something interesting. In the few weeks Tyler had been staying with her, she'd noticed that he got mail at her apartment from several different companies. Marketing companies, she thought. She'd assumed it was business correspondence. But now she realized it was probably evidence of more of Tyler's under-the-table work, more unreported income that he could have been using to pay me back instead of funding his party lifestyle. She offered to forward any mail that came for Tyler to Mrs. Chen's office, in case it was relevant to my restitution case. I thanked her and told her she seemed like a nice person who deserved better than someone like Tyler. Yeah, she said, I'm starting to figure that out. 6 months after Tyler was sentenced, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I'd found a small apartment in a nice neighborhood, nothing fancy, but clean and safe and affordable. I'd gotten a part-time job at a local library, which didn't pay much but kept me busy and gave me a sense of purpose. Most importantly, I'd started sleeping through the night again. For months after discovering Tyler's theft, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a panic, wondering what other financial bombs were going to go off, what other ways my son had sabotaged my future. But gradually, as Mrs. Chen and I worked through all the legal and financial cleanup, I realized that I was going to be okay. Not the same as I would have been with my full retirement fund, but okay. I was tougher than I'd given myself credit for. One day, I got a letter from Tyler in prison. My first instinct was to throw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Mom, it started. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, and I realize now how badly I hurt you. The letter went on for 3 pages. Tyler talked about taking responsibility for his actions, about understanding the impact of his choices, about wanting to make things right when he got out of prison. It sounded sincere. It sounded like maybe, finally, Tyler was growing up and realizing what he'd done. But you know what? I'd heard it all before. 20 years of Tyler promising to do better, to be more responsible, to make better choices. 20 years of believing him and being disappointed. I wasn't falling for it again. I wrote back. 1 sentence. Actions speak louder than words, Tyler. Show me, don't tell me. That was 8 months ago. Tyler has sent me 4 more letters since then, each one full of promises and apologies and plans for how he's going to turn his life around when he gets out. I haven't responded to any of them, but here's what I have done. I've started a blog. Yeah, at 67 years old, I started a blog about financial abuse in families. I write about warning signs, about how to protect yourself, about the importance of maintaining control over your own money, no matter how much you trust someone. The blog has gotten pretty popular. I get emails from people all over the country who've been through similar situations with their adult children, their spouses, their siblings. People who trusted someone they loved and paid a terrible price for it. I've been invited to speak at senior centers and community groups about financial safety. I've helped 3 other families navigate the legal process of recovering stolen money from family members. It feels good to turn my painful experience into something that helps other people. And you know what the most popular post on my blog is? The one titled, How I Got My Revenge on the Son Who Stole My Retirement Money. Because that's what people want to hear. Not just the sad story of betrayal, but the satisfying story of justice, the story of consequences, the story of a woman who refused to be a victim. Tyler gets out of prison in 18 months. When he does, he's going to discover that the world isn't going to welcome him back with open arms. He's a convicted felon now. Finding good work is going to be difficult. Finding someone willing to trust him with money or responsibility is going to be nearly impossible. He's going to have to rebuild his entire life from scratch, while also making restitution payments to me for the next 20 years. And you know what? I'm not going to help him. I'm not going to co-sign any more loans, or let him move back in with me, or give him money to get back on his feet. I'm done being Tyler's safety net. He wanted to be independent, to be his own man, to live the entrepreneur lifestyle. Well, now he gets to do it the hard way, the way most people have to do it, by working, by saving, by making responsible choices, and living with the consequences when they don't. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if sending my own son to prison was the right thing to do, if there was some other way I could have handled the situation. But then I remember those fake investment statements. I remember the parties he threw with my money while I thought he was being responsible with it. I remember the BMW and the Mercedes and the lies upon lies upon lies. And I remember that Tyler is 34 years old now. He's not a confused teenager who made a mistake. He's a grown man who made a calculated decision to steal from his elderly mother because he thought I was too trusting and too weak to stop him. He was wrong about the weak part. These days, I'm actually happier than I've been in years. I have my little apartment, my part-time job at the library, my blog, my speaking engagements. I have independence and dignity and the satisfaction of knowing that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. I have friends, real friends, not people who want to use me or take advantage of me. I have activities I enjoy and a sense of purpose. Most importantly, I have self-respect. I prove to myself that I'm not just a pushover who can be taken advantage of. I'm a woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to fight for it. Tyler took my money, but he gave me something valuable in return, even though he didn't mean to. He gave me the opportunity to discover just how strong I really am. And honestly, that might be worth more than the retirement fund ever was. So to anyone out there who's dealing with a family member who's taking advantage of them, who's stealing from them, who's treating them like a personal ATM, don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Don't be afraid to let them face the consequences of their actions. You deserve better. You deserve respect. And you're stronger than you think you are. Trust me on that one.